Namaste and Jai Swaminarayan. Welcome to this week's episode of Timeless Hindu Wisdom. This is a special web series delivered by the Swamis of BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha. It has been initiated to inspire us during these challenging times with the universal wisdom of ancient Hindu scriptures, presented in a contemporary, bite-sized format. Vivek Jivandas Swami was brought up and educated in London, UK. After studying biochemistry at Chelsea College of Science and Technology, now a part of King's College London, he was ordained as a sadhu by His Holiness Pramukh Swami Maharaj in 1976. Thereafter, he studied Eastern and Western philosophy and Indian classical vocal music in Ahmedabad, Gujarat. For the past 3 decades, he has been writing and editing BAPS's bi-monthly spiritual magazine in English, Swaminarayan Bliss. He has also translated and authored several books in English, including the popularly acclaimed 2-part Hinduism, An Introduction. Vivek Jivandas Swami is a versatile speaker addressing high school and university students as well as professionals and young adults on a regular basis in India. His insightful and motivational talks relate to life issues, Hindu values, and spiritual teachings. So without further ado, I now hand it over to Vivek Jivandas Swami.
Reinventing ourselves. Reinventing ourselves means remaking or restructuring ourselves. The task of reinventing ourselves is a difficult and challenging one. Circumstances mold us. Triumphs and tragedies reshape our perceptions, and spirituality dissolve hardened attitudes, prejudices, and base nature. Obviously, reinventing ourselves is required for higher progress, higher happiness, and higher development. There are many examples with regards to reinventing ourselves. Let us explore some of the different perspectives of reinventing ourselves. Number 1, reinventing ourselves for survival and growth. It is amazing how animals living in different habitats adapt to their challenging and difficult environment. In the high mountains, animals have to have large lungs in order to breathe the thin air. They should be able to withstand extremes of heat, cold, and wind. Animals living on the mountains, they have to develop their feet in such a manner that they do not sink in the snow, and they're able to grip the tough, rocky, and icy terrains. Animals living on the mountains, they have to reinvent themselves over a period of generations in order to survive and flourish. The mountain goat and the chamois, they fit this requirement perfectly. Secondly, reinventing ourselves for success. About a decade back, the Ford Company decided to enter into the Indian lucrative market. They decided to introduce their Ford Escort model. Before introducing their cars into the Indian market, they decided to see how well their cars would be able to conform to the Indian roads and environment. So, they ran a fleet of cars on the Indian roads and dirt roads to see as to how the car would be able to withstand the environment and the harshness of the situations in India. After 3 weeks, they brought all those cars back to their garages in India. All the cars were dismantled and analyzed as to where the wear and tear had taken place. The Ford company arrived on 4 essential changes that they felt were necessary in order to conform to the Indian roads and the environment. The first change they decided to make was to reinforce the suspension as well as the shock absorbers for the rough Indian roads. The second thing they decided upon was to redesign the piston in the engines in order to make it effective on Indian fuel. The third change was to tweak the CFC-free air conditioning system in order to be effective with the blistering Indian summers. That is, the air conditioning system should withstand or should function well at temperatures of 48 degrees centigrade. And the last aspect that they decided to reinvent was to change the air inlets in the car. They raised the air inlets in the car so that the Indian monsoon would not flood the car, reinventing their car for success in the Indian environment. The Ford company made these changes in order to conform to the Indian roads, the Indian fuel, the environment, and the seasons, reinventing ourselves. The third reason why it's important to reinvent ourselves is to offer service to the nation or for self-defense. In the United States Army, recruits go through the infantry training. It's a 4-month training period. Each batch has 150 recruits, and the sergeant drill oversees and overlooks and trains these 150 recruits. There are some disciplines which they have to follow. One recruit who had gone through the infantry training shared his experiences, and he said that the principle behind the infantry training is that first they break you and then they remake you. In other words, he also added that the training is 95% mental and 5% physical training. The principal aim is discipline and uniformity. What are some of those disciplines and instructions that they had to go through? All the recruits, before having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they have to drink compulsorily 4 glasses of water. And only after that, they could have breakfast, they could eat their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Whatever that was served on their plate, they were supposed to eat only that. They had to finish eating in only 5 minutes. No conversation with anybody. They were not allowed to touch other sumptuous items that were there laid on the table. If anybody lapsed in the rules, there was a heavy punishment. Reinventing ourselves. The recruit also shared a very interesting incident whereby every night when the recruits went to sleep in their dormitory, one of them was chosen to stand on guard outside the dormitory. In other words, he was a sentry who had to stay awake all night. It so happened that one day the sergeant drill, he came to the dormitory, and outside the sentry, he was dozing. The sentry was mad, and he opened the doors of the dormitory, switched on the lights at 3 a.m. in the morning, and he emptied a trash can in the middle of the hallway, in the middle of the dormitory, and he shouted to everyone, "Everyone, get up and start cleaning. Clean the dormitory. Scrub the toilets and bathrooms. The recruit described that they started cleaning their dormitory, scrubbing their toilets and bathrooms from 3 a.m. in the morning till evening on that day. He said that the principal rule was you have to obey the sergeant drill. You are not allowed to argue with him. Reinventing ourselves for service to the nation and defense of the nation. The fourth example that I'd like to share with you is about an article that I had read about 3 decades back in the Time Life magazine. The Time Life magazine carried an article about a prestigious B school in Japan. The business school gave higher training for special recruits. Who were allowed to enroll in this special business school? There had to be CEOs and MDs of national or multinational companies. It meant that CEOs and MDs of big companies like Toyota, Mitsubishi, Sanyo, etc., they were allowed to enroll in that special B school. It may surprise us, or you may want to ask a question as to why CEOs and MDs would require higher management training. This particular school prepared the CEOs and MDs to face stress while they worked, to face the pressures that they had to undergo while managing the company. Each of these recruits, as soon as they entered the business school, 17 ribbons would be pinned onto their coat. Each ribbon represented a test, an exercise, a challenging exercise. Some of those exercises were, one, for example, one of the exercises was that all the recruits were given an A4 size paper. Something was written on that A4 size paper which did not make any sense at all. And all the recruits, they had to memorize the paper that they had been given, though it did not make any sense at all. But they had to memorize it, and they had to present what they had memorized. If they passed that exam, one of the ribbons was removed. Another exam was the salesman's song. Each of the recruits, they had to go to a railway station during the rush hours, either in the morning or evenings, and they would stand outside the railway station as people passed by, and they had to sing the salesman's song on top of their voices. Whether they had a good voice or not, they had to complete singing the salesman's song. People gave them eyeballs. Some even insulted them or criticized them. But the recruits had to be equipoised. They had to remain stable and in equilibrium, in mental equilibrium, and complete their salesman's song, complete singing their salesman's song. A third test was a cross-country run at 3 a.m. in the morning. Now remember, these recruits were probably in their 50s or even in their 60s, but they had to go through the cross-country run and start at 3 a.m. in the morning. They would stumble, they would fall, they would get injured, they would get tired, they would be huffing and puffing, but they had to finish the cross-country run. These were some of the exercises that they had to go through in order for higher training, in order to manage higher relationships with their customers or with their staff members. Reinventing ourselves, reinventing, restructuring, or remaking, whatever you would like to call. All these things are necessary in all aspects of life. Restructuring, reinventing does not only apply for animals in nature. It does not only apply for an auto company. It does not apply for the US Army training. It does not only apply for a higher business management school. Reinventing ourselves applies to all aspects of life if we want to progress, if we want greater progress, if we want greater success, if we want higher happiness in life. We have to adapt ourselves. We have to change ourselves. We have to brace ourselves against challenges and problems in life. That is why reinventing ourselves is important. And lastly, spirituality is another domain. Spirituality also has the same principles of obedience, trust, perseverance, fearlessness, in order to elevate ourselves spiritually and morally as well. The Upanishads are one of the ancient storehouses or repositories of the ancient wisdom of Hinduism. Arthur Schopenhauer, a German philosopher, when he read a translation of the Upanishads, he expressed his joy, saying, "In the realm of knowledge, there is no study so beneficial and so elevating as that of the Upanishads. It has been the solace of my life and will remain the solace after my death." In the Chandogya Upanishad, there is a wonderful story between the guru and the disciple. The story of reinventing oneself. In other words, conforming to the words and instructions of the guru. The Chandogya Upanishad describes the Guru-Sishya relationship between the Guru Haridrumat Gautam and Satyakam Jabali, the disciple. Satyakam Jabali came to the Gurukul, that is the ancient school or ashram or hermitage of sage Gautam, Haridrumat Gautam, in order to learn spiritual knowledge, in order to get knowledge. It so happened that the Guru, Rishi Gautam, told Satyakam Jabali, "Take these 400 cows and go to the forest and return when they have multiplied to 1,000. Satyakam Jabali did not argue with the Guru. Implicit obedience to the word of the Guru is the ideal characteristic of a disciple. Satyakam Jabali did not debate with the Guru, nor did he question the Guru, and he obeyed the word of the Guru. He took the 400 cows to the forest. Many years passed by. And when the cows had multiplied to 1,000, a voice from the sky informed Satyakam Jabali that his task was over. Satyakam Jabali returned to the ashram, and the Guru, he blessed Satyakam Jabali with spiritual realization. Reinventing ourselves, obedience to the Guru, trust in the Guru, faith in the Guru. These are principles which enable a disciple to soar the heights of spirituality and God realization. So far, we have seen 5 different examples or situations. The first one we saw was how animals adapt to their environment, reinventing or restructuring themselves. The second example was about how a company, in order to strive and attain success, how they had to re-engineer their car or their model. The third example was about army training, how it prepares an individual to defend and serve his or her nation. The fourth example was about a higher management training school, a B school, a special B school, which trains and remolds managing directors and CEOs of companies, of big companies, in order to make them more efficient with regards to managing their company or better customer care. And the last example was about spirituality. The Upanishads, which tell a story about the relationship between a guru and a disciple. Now the question that arises is that in what areas of life should we restructure or reinvent or reshape ourselves? Pramukh Swami Maharaj, the fifth spiritual master of the BAPS, who had created and inspired the BAPS Mandir in London, who had inspired the Akshardhams in India as well as in Robbinsville, and he had inspired many other activities, social and spiritual activities for the benefit of society and mankind. Pramukh Swami Maharaj was asked as to which areas in life one should focus to improve oneself, to reinvent oneself. Pramukh Swami Maharaj very succinctly pointed out 3 areas of life. First, education. Second, health. And last, values or faith. Health is very important. It is important that we take care of our own physical selves. It is the prime aspect of life. If one's health is good, one will be able to do things efficiently and happily and with great joy. Education is another aspect of life where a sound education definitely provides a better future life for the individual or for society at large. Education, a sound education, a proper education. But these 2 aspects are not enough to live a better, a greater, a progressive life as a human being. Mahatma Gandhi had often said, if the education you get takes you away from God, I do not know how it will help you and how you are going to help the world. In other words, value-based life, faith-based life is very important. So Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he spelled out 3 aspects whereby an individual should focus in order to improve oneself, in order to reinvent oneself, remold oneself. Many years back, Pramukh Swami Maharaj was in Ahmedabad in Gujarat. He was giving an audience to people who wanted to meet him, who wanted to consult him, and also to seek his blessings. Some were devotees of the organization, and others were not devotees of the organization or of Pramukh Swami Maharaj. It so happened that 3 persons came up before Pramukh Swamiji. And Pramukh Swamiji was able to gauge the fact that they had several vices in their life. So Pramukh Swami Maharaj very, very generously blessed them, and then he advised them, and he said that you must have 3 addictions in life. Those 3 persons, they were surprised and also very happy because they had addictions in their life. They felt that here is a spiritual master. Here is a guru with whom we can resonate or we can tune ourselves with. Because he's telling us to have 3 addictions. So more or less he is endorsing the addictions and vices that we have in our life. So somehow he seems very conducive for us all. This is what the 3 of them thought. And then Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he elaborated and he said, the first addiction you must have in your life is that you must not have any addictions in life. you must try to live and have a vegetarian diet, which is beneficial for your health. The second addiction that Pramukh Swami unfolded and told those three persons, he said, whatever that you do it properly and do it honestly. Whatever work that you do it properly and do it honestly. And lastly, Swami said, the third addiction is that you must pray to God. You must worship God, whoever you may believe in, whatever your religion may be. But pray to God, worship Him, read the scriptures. These three aspects that Pramukh Swami Maharaj declared to those three persons. By thinking in retrospect, I felt that Pramukh Swami Maharaj gave the roadmap of life to those three individuals. Whether those three individuals imbibed the message of Pramukh Swamiji, I don't know. But some of us who were present there realized that in three short statements, Pramukh Swamiji gave the roadmap of life. In what way did he give the roadmap of life? Firstly, health is important. Our physical self, our physical body. If you are healthy, then you are able to do, or you will be able to do anything and everything in life. Health is of prime importance. So the first statement that Swamiji gave was, no addictions for good health, and a vegetarian diet for good health. The second statement that Swamiji stated was to do your work properly and honestly. If any person, anywhere, if he does his work properly and honestly, he himself will progress in life. His family will become happier. Society will also be elevated, and the world as a whole will also progress because individuals do their work properly and honestly. And the last thing that Swamiji said was, pray to God, worship God, spirituality. The third aspect was referring to the elevation of the soul. By praying to God, by worshipping God, we are able to attain inner purification and the elevation of the Atma or the soul to God's abode. So, the three statements gave the roadmap of life: body, the individual or society, and the soul. Pramukh Swamiji, and at present Mahant Swamiji, the present leader of the BAPS, they teach people and society to reinvent themselves for higher progress in life, for greater happiness in life, and ultimately for eternal bliss of the soul. This is called reinventing ourselves. In order to reinvent ourselves, it is important that we read the scriptures, the Shastras, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, the Vachnamrit by Bhagwan Swaminarayan. Only then do we get higher thoughts in life and higher inspirations in life to scale greater heights in our lives. The spiritual master or the guru, he guides through his own life, through his own teachings. A living guru is important. Carl Jung, a Swiss psychoanalyst, often talked about the need of a living guru in life. He said, "In my darkness, I could have wished for nothing better than a real-life guru, someone possessing superior knowledge and ability, who would have disentangled me from the involuntary creations of my imagination." Reinventing ourselves is the essence of life. The more we change ourselves for the better, the more we are able to elevate ourselves, to reinvent ourselves, then things become a lot easier. Our work, our family, our spirituality. So reinventing ourselves is an important aspect of life. Thank you.